Hi folks, Dr. Mark Simpson here. A quick disclaimer. The material in this video series is meant to be a resource for a provider and his or her client who is challenged by substance abuse and or anger management. Those who wish to learn more about treating substance abuse and anger management may also find this resource useful. This video series is not meant to be a do-it-yourself approach. Seek help if you're challenged with any physical, mental, and or behavioral health problem. And like always, call 911 or go to the nearest emergency department if you are having thoughts of self-harm or thoughts to harm someone else. Let's get started. I'm glad you're back. Let me begin by telling you a story. Someone I know calls me one day. He wasn't working at the time and he was short on money. He asked me if I had any work that needs to be done. He wants to earn a few bucks. Actually, at that time, I was just preparing to paint the inside of my daughter's home. Because I was working, I was planning on doing the work in the evenings and on weekends when I wasn't working. So this was actually perfect timing. So I said, yeah, and I told him about the painting that I need to have done. I met him and his friend at the house. I told him to paint everything, walls, doors, the ceiling. I brought the supplies, paint, brushes, rollers, tape, the usual stuff for painting. I told him that they don't need to put down drop cloths because I plan to recarpet the place. So if they get paint on the floor, no problem. He calls me later in the day. He said they're done. I said, cool. He said, do you want us to take up the carpet? He remembered me saying that I was planning to take up the carpet and to lay some new carpet. So I said, yes. And if you take it to the dump, which is about 10 minutes away from the house, I'll give you money for the cost of gasoline and the fee for the dump. He said, okay. I get there later in the day. I'm checking out the job. Looks good, looks good. I'm looking around, looks good. I didn't notice it at first, but then I noticed it. I looked at the floor. Oh, something's wrong. Oh no, I thought to myself. Yeah, the carpet was removed like he agreed to do, but not only was the carpet removed, so was the padding and even the tack strip that holds the carpet in place were gone. The carpet was only a few years old, so I know that the padding was in pretty good shape. And you know, tack strips last forever. I asked him, why did you take up the padding and the tack strips? We talked about the carpet. We agreed upon you taking up the carpet. He got quiet. He got this apologetic look on his face and said, I didn't know, I'm sorry. I said, well, why didn't you call me if you didn't know? Oh man, I'm thinking to myself, when you take up the carpet, you'll always leave the padding and the tack strip. And if you're not sure, you should ask. I'm thinking everyone knows this, right? I'm thinking to myself, do you know what it's going to cost to buy new padding and new tack strips to put down throughout the house and pay someone to do it? I'll tell you this, it costs more than the carpet. And you know what makes this whole thing worse? Is I gotta pay these guys. Not to mention the padding, the tack strip, and to pay someone to put it down. Can you feel my anger going up as I tell this story? I'm sure you can. Remember this carpet incident. I'll be talking more about it in today's session and also be going over other stories in this session and in future sessions. Let's get started with today's lesson. Events that trigger anger and anger cues. And I'll explain the check-in process for you and your provider for all of the remaining sessions. Have you ever went to the grocery store? I know you have. And there are two lines to the cash register to pick from. One on the left with two people in it. They don't have too many items in their basket. And another line on the right with 5 people in the line, and they have all kinds of stuff in their basket. Yep, I know you have. So this is a no-brainer. You pick the line on the left to stand in. But after about 10 minutes that seems like 30 minutes, your line has not moved at all. But all 5 people that were in the line on your right had their groceries rung up and they're out of the store. They're probably at home watching Netflix or something, and you're still in line. And how do you know they're gone? Because you were counting, right? And you're now upset with your cashier because you picked the wrong line. And you're thinking to yourself, oh man, oh, slowpoke. Well, this scenario, like the carpet story, is what is called an anger-provoking event. In terms of anger management, it's critical that you understand what provokes your anger. And it's critical that you understand your red flags. Those are situations that make your blood boil, or so it seems. Let me give you an example of someone I was working with and one of her red flags. So I'm working with a young Latin woman. She has a niece who's about 5 years old, and her niece is half Latin American and half African American, with noticeable African American features. Now, Auntie loves spending time with her niece, and she frequently takes her when she shops, run errands, takes her to places like the zoo or the movies. They do all kinds of stuff together. Auntie told me on a couple of occasions she saw someone give her niece a bad look, and this pisses her off. She described this as a serious red flag for her. Auntie stated that she does not have any problems with walking up to someone, cussing them out, and going off on them if they give her niece a bad look. Auntie described being so sensitive about this that if she even thinks that another person is thinking something negative about her niece, bam, it's on. Can you relate to that? Can you think of any red flags of yours? Because Auntie is so sensitive about her niece, she will admit that she sometimes misinterprets others and go off on someone when maybe she shouldn't have. Have you ever been told regarding your anger towards others that you sometimes misinterpret what is communicated or not communicated? Sometimes red flags can be influenced by things or events that occurred in your childhood that have stayed with you into adulthood. Can you think of one of your red flags? Can you see any problem with Auntie and her red flags? Have you ever been told regarding your anger towards others that you sometimes misinterpret what others are communicating or not communicating? Sometimes red flags can be influenced by things or an event that occurred in your childhood that has stayed with you into adulthood. For example, when you were growing up, being told perhaps you were slow and being made fun of. Perhaps someone called you dumb or stupid and you never got over it. Now, whenever someone makes a reference about your intelligence, that it's below average, it's like the ringing of a bell. Ding! Round one. It's time to get it on. You know what I'm talking about? That could be a red flag for you. Let's look at this list of events that may provoke your anger or be a red flag for you. Traffic congestion, crowded buses, a friend joking about a sensitive topic, a friend not paying back money owed to you, being accused of lying, having to clean up someone else's mess, someone scolding your children, being placed on hold for a long period of time while on the telephone, people not coming through with something they agreed to do, rumors being spread about your relapse that are not true. Can you relate to any of these anger-provoking events? Are any of these a red flag for you? Are any of your anger cues activated? What are anger cues? Anger cues are your response to the anger-provoking event and serve as a warning sign that you are angry and or your anger is escalating. Like the carpet incident, and like someone giving auntie's niece a bad look. Anger cues fall into 4 categories: your physiology, behavioral, emotional, and cognitive. Cognitive cues refers to your thinking that is triggered by the anger-provoking event. Physical cues involve the way our bodies respond when we become angry. For example, our heart rate may increase. We may feel tightness in our chest, or we may feel hot and flushed. These physical cues can also warn us that our anger is escalating up the anger meter. We can learn to identify these cues when they occur in response to an anger-provoking event. Can you identify some of the physical cues that you have experienced when you become angry? Let's talk about behavioral cues. Behavioral cues involve the behaviors we display when we get angry, which are observed by people around us. For example, we may clench our fist, pace back and forth, raise our voice, and or use profanity. Sometimes we drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, or go to the casino and spend some money we have no business spending. Behavioral cues, as with physical cues, are warning signs that we may be moving up on the anger meter. What are some of the behavioral cues you experienced when you become angry? Let's talk about emotional cues. Emotional cues involve feelings that may occur during or after an anger-provoking event. However, know that anger is a secondary emotion, and an important component of anger management is to become aware of and to recognize the primary feeling that underlies our anger. For example, these underlying feelings may include feelings of being betrayed, abandoned, discounted, disrespected, feeling unwanted, and or unloved, that in turn results in feelings of anger. Can you identify some of the primary feelings that you have experienced during an episode of anger? Lastly, let's talk about cognitive cues. Cognitive cues refers to the thoughts that occur in response to the anger-provoking event. Sometimes cognitive cues are like a DVD or a VCR, where you keep rewinding and playing the activating event over and over and over. And the more you replay this anger-provoking event in your head, the angrier you become. When people become angry, they may interpret events in certain ways. For example, we may interpret a friend's comments as criticism, or we may interpret their action as being demeaning, humiliating, or maybe they're trying to be controlling. Some people call these thoughts self-talk because they resemble conversations we have with ourselves. So it's critical we examine our thoughts about an anger-provoking event. If we refute our unpleasant thought, we can often change our mood about what we experienced and what it may or may not mean to us. Now that we just went over 1, events that trigger anger, and 2, cues to anger, now let's go over the check-in process. All of the sessions going forward will start with the check-in process, whether it's an individual session or a group session. So be sure to do this process with the provider you're working with. Everyone checks in by stating over the past week what was the highest number he or she achieved on the anger meter. You remember the anger meter. And be prepared to discuss the anger-provoking event you experienced and what your anger cues were. And lastly, what strategies you used to address those 4 anger cues and what you did to prevent your anger from escalating on the anger meter to a 10. I can't end the session without bringing you back to the carpet incident. You remember the carpet incident. I'm sure you do. Let's look at the anger meter and how high I went up the anger meter. And let me identify my cues with respect to that incident. I consider myself a 4 on the anger meter in my worker/friend's presence. However, after they left, I definitely did some pacing and I thought to myself, how stupid these guys are. Had I called those 2 guys stupid to their face, I would have given myself a 6 on the anger meter. Thinking someone is stupid and calling someone stupid is 2 different things, right? I can't count how many times I've taught this group. After I tell this story, I think it's only fair that I ask my group participants and what their take is on this incident. Was it really stupidity on their part? There's always a few people in the group who will point out that I am also at fault and that I should have communicated my expectations better. Someone will say that the guys went over what was expected of them and that they really just wanted to do a good job. Okay, I hear you. I agree that my crew was really trying to do the best job they could. This painting and carpet job was a learning experience for me. Effective communication applies to me just as much as it applies to you. Whenever I'm involved in a conflict, I have to examine what was my role. Is there something that I could have done differently? In this situation, it involved communication. As it has been pointed out, I should have been clearer with my expectations in terms of what I wanted. I didn't specify anything about the padding or the tack strips. That was my error. I should have told the guys to let me know what the condition of the padding was and the tack strip. Because more than likely, I plan to use them for the next carpet. I think you agree. I should have told the guys to let me know what condition of the padding and the tack strips were. Because more than likely, I plan to use them for the next carpet. Am I right? I think you agree. Let's close with a reminder about the homework. Remember to review today's lesson, monitor your anger over the next week, and watch the next video session presentation. I hope you found this video presentation helpful. Take care and see you in session 3.